The $100 startup model. I have been hearing stories about unconventional business at least a decade, even as I have been operating a series of them myself through my work as a writer and entrepreneur. I had access a wide circle of micro business case studies. Profitable business typically can stall by any person without much in the way of startup capital. In preparing for the comprehensive study, I began by checking with many of my friends and colleagues, but I didn't stop here. In 2010, I produced a series of workshops on low budget business ideas with Pamela Slim, author of Escape from the Cubican Nation. The first time we announced a workshop, it stole out in 90 minutes. We were offered support in another workshop, and that wouldn't be held for several months, and it sold out before lunchtime. Since it was clear we had found a demand for this information, I dug deeper. While hosting the workshop, I became interested in follow your passion model. The idea that successful small businessmen are often built the pursuit of the personal hobby and interest. I conducted interviews and the entrepreneurs all over the world and documented their stories for an online course called the Empire Building Kit. The course was inspirational for launching the project on a wider scale and then for writing this book. I had a number of case studies in mind at the outset, but in preparation for writing the book, I cast the net much wider. I drew response from online and offline, collecting data through a Google form, and that grew the thousands of data points. As I traveled to 63 cities in North America on a book tour, I keep meeting and hearing about more unconventional accidental entrepreneurs. When I finally closed the nomination process, I had more often than 1,500 responses to choose from. All of the responses meet at least 4 to the following 6 criteria. Follow your passion model. Many people are interested in building a business that is based on hobby or activity they are especially enthusiastic about. As we will see, not every passion leads to big bank deposit, but some certainly do. Low startup cost. I was interested in business that required less than $1,000 startup in capital, especially those that cost almost nothing, less than $1,000 to begin. At least $15,000, at least $50,000 a year in net income. I wanted profitable business that earned at least as much as average North American income. As we go along, you will notice that range varies considerably, with many businessmen earning healthy six-figure incomes or higher, but a baseline profitability level of least $50,000 a year was required. No special skill. Since we were looking for the ordinary people who created a successful business, I had a bias towards business and anyone can operate. This point can be hard to define, but there is a key distinction. Many business requires specialized skill for some kind, but they are skill that can be acquired through a short period of training and independent study. You could learn to be coffee roaster on a job, for example, but hopefully not a dentist. Full financial disclosure. Respondents from a study agreed to disclose their income projection for the certain year and actual income for at least the previous 2 years. Furthermore, they had to be willing to discuss income and expenses in specific terms. fewer than 5 employees. For the most part, I was interested in expected or accidental entrepreneurs who deliberately choose to remain small. Many of case studies are from business operates statically by one person, which closely related to the goal of the personal freedom that so many respondents identified. I included businesses that were in adult or quasi legal markets, and in most cases also excluded businesses that were highly technical or required special skill to operate. The baseline test was, could you explain what you do your godmother and you will be willing to? I repeat, could you explain what you do to your grandmother and would you be willing to? I confused. What is this? I repeat again. Could you explain what you do to your grandmother and would you willing to? Next, I wanted to look at businesses started by people all over the world. About half of the stories come from the United States and half come from the rest of the world. From Silicon Valleys to the Atlanta, the US in the hub of entrepreneurship, both in terms of values and ease of a startup. But we will see people from all over the world are creating their own micro businesses, sometimes following the US model and other times doing it independently. Finally, in marketing and last selections for the studies presented here, I had a bias towards interesting stories. Not every business needs to be sexy or trendworthy. In fact, many of one's here needs to be sexy or trendworthy. But I like a story that are highlighted originally and creatively. 2 years ago in Minneapolis, Lisa Salman attracted my attention by telling me about her dog care business. At first, I didn't think about of it, but profitable could be a dog care business be? But the Lisa told me how much money she made, $88,000 the previous year and on track to close a six figure the next year. All of a sudden, I was interested. How did Lisa do it? And what lesson could we learn from her? Each case study subject complicated several details surveys about his or her business, including financial data and demographics. In attention of the demands and the open-ended question, the group surveys were founded up the further individuals question in hundreds of emails, phone calls, Skype video calls, and in-person meeting in 15 cities around the world. My goal was create a narrative by finding the common themes around the diverse group. The collected data would be enough for the several thick books by myself, but I have tried present only the most important information here. You can learn more about methodology for the study including survey data and specific interviews at 100startup.com. In other studies, books and media covers two kind of business models get almost of the attention. Business model number 1 is old school. An inventor gets an idea and pursues to the bank to lend her money for growing operation or a company spins off and diversion to create another company. Most corporation trends on the stock market fit this category. Business model number 2 is the investment driven startup, which is typically focused on venture capital, buyouts, advertising, and market shares. The business is initiated by founder or small groups of partners, but often run by a management terms reporting to a board of the directors and who seeks to increase the business valuation with the goal of going public or being acquired. Each of the older model has strengths, weakness, and the various other characteristics. In both of them, there is no shortage of success and failure stories, but these models and their stories are not our concern here. While business models number 1 and number 2 have been getting all the attentions, something else has been happening quietly, something completely different. Our stories is about people who start their own micro businesses without investment, without employees, and often without much of an idea what they are doing. They almost never have a formal business plan and often don't have any plan at other beside. Try this out and see what happens. More often than not, the business launches quickly without waiting the permission from a board or major market. Testing happens on fly. Are customers buying? If the answer is yes, good. If no, what can do differently? Like missiles, progression, and corporate car, to the mattresses, bicyclist. Many of our case psych studies started business accidentally after experiencing a hardship such as losing a job. In Masquerades, Jessica Rangel, salesman, husband's call, and from the work to say he is coming home early, and he wouldn't be going back to the office the next day. The unexpected layoff capitalized Jessica's new mother to the 3-week-old into action, and part-time bookkeeping hobby become the family full-time income. In Pennsylvania, Tara Janitra starting her business with a goal of being able to work with home while caring for her children. The business grew so quickly that her husband ended up staying home too. Across the Atlantic, David Hengel was a director for the largest advertising agency outside London. He left in part of because he was bored with the work, and part because the diagnosis of the chronic fatigue syndrome that left him struggling with the chronic direct responsibilities in the new company Lightwell Design. He makes the rule for a while and the illness managed me, he said. But now I manage it. Lightwell will start as a way for me to make a living on my terms. It's still on my terms, but now we are kicking ass. The people we will meet vary considerably in the ways they choose to structure their projects. Some eventually opted for expression either by hiring or building terms or virtual assistant. Erika Kosmeski grew her transcription terms or 17 people at one point, but were working with the constructors instead by hiring employees. She retains the freedom to keep things simple. The Tom Villages factory in Seattle grew to the 7-figure operation while remaining completely independent and turning down offers to sell the line to the big box stores. Other pursues partnership that allows each person to focus on what he or she was best at. Fresh out the design school and diligent and their entry-level jobs, Jen Adrian and Omar Norway began selling costume made-up maps and apartment in Columbus, Ohio. Patrick McJoram and Rich Strasser were competitors who turned upon to create a community for endurance athletes. Several of our stories were about married couple or partners building a business together, but many of others choosing to be go alone with the conviction that they would be the find the freedom by working primarily by themselves. Charlie Pavast was a successful architect with a dream job as a story designer for a Starbucks, but the desire for autonomy overcame the comfort for a dream job and the freelance. One day I drove to work and realized I couldn't do it anymore. Called in sick, drafted my 2 week notice, and the rest is history. The Charlie still works as a designer, but now he works from home and clients of his choosing. We will view these stories and assemble a group of individual voices that, when considered together, compromise an original composition in sharing of how different people have set themselves free from the corporate mystery. The challenge is to be acknowledge their courage without exchanging their skills. Most of them aren't genius or natural born entrepreneurs. They are ordinary people who made a few key decisions that changed their lives. Very few of our case study went to the business school, and more than half of had a previous business expenses. Whatever, several dropped out of the college and other never went in first place, of course. In sharing these stories, the goal is to provide the blueprint for the freedom, a plan you can use to apply their lessons to your own escape plan. Throughout the case studies, 3 lessons of micro business entrepreneurs emerge. We will focus on these lessons in various ways throughout the book. Thank you. See you tomorrow.